If you thought that the Temple of Space was going to be the major lore drop world quest of Song of the Welkin Moon, then Luna 8 has a surprise for you, because we're going to the moon. Oh, I guess we already went there. But this time, we're exploring the entire surface, learning about the dragons who lived there, and seeing exactly what Nicole meant when she said Nibelung transformed the moons into weapons. And also, we watch in real time as everyone's latest favorite Heavenly Principles fan theory gets obliterated. I'll start with a recap where I try to clarify everything that happened, and then we can talk about some things we learn and potential theories. There is a lot more lore on the moon than just the world quest, but this video will mostly focus on the quest itself. We can cover the rest later, after I 100% the whole moon. We start on a new island where we suddenly see Columbina. She runs away from us across the water because she evidently doesn't hear or see us. We follow her all the way to another new island. This one has some clear dragon architecture, and when we go to this panel in the back, we get a text overlay that is very similar to how Kukul Khan spoke into our heads all throughout the Natlan World Quest. To drive the point home even more that we're in a dragon base, we also have to fight a secret source automaton. We proceed into the depths of the area where Paimon decides to touch something and instantly sets off an alarm. Way to go, Paimon. Oh, but it was actually just a low power warning. So we make our way to the generator, where we find Columbina, who for some reason is not talking, and she gives us gravity powers so that we can activate the generator as well as do the various puzzles in the area by absorbing Archaeolune energy from various devices. Back in the main room, we discover this base is a moon shuttle launch area. It used to be able to go to all 3 moons, but of course 2 of them are destroyed, so now it only goes to the Frost Moon. Also, Paimon gives us this note, but I forgot to look at it and it's not in my inventory after the quest, so I assume it's not important. Anyway, Traveler suspects something is off with the way Columbina is acting, and tries to do the energy sharing trick from the Archon quest, which reveals that it's not Columbina at all. We pursue the imposter Black Kuhenki into the depths of the base and see the spaceship. We have to destroy the base defenses in order to keep up the pursuit, which activates the self-destruct. We need to enter the Frost Moon coordinates from before, and Paimon remembers them wrong. If you enter the complete wrong coordinates, you get this message, and try again. It's kinda like when you do the bad ending of Huitzilopochtli, except this one doesn't tell you anything interesting and is pointless. If you follow Paimon's incorrect instructions, eventually the Black Kuhenki helps you get the right combination, but I just did it right the first time. Once you enter the correct combo, the Kuhenki says something about Columbina and the moon and a rescue, which makes the Traveler decide to board the spaceship and go to the moon. You may also have noticed that this quest is making all sorts of references with the names of its achievements. 25 Ganses is a reference to a short story from the 1600s, where a guy attaches 25 swans to a chariot, and they eventually fly him to the moon. I'm not going to go over every one of these achievements, just the ones that stood out to me. On the ship, Paimon gets mad at the Kuhenki for being silent, but eventually we find a device that lets her speak. We find out that the Kuhenki was trying to say that she wants to go back to the moon after Columbina rescued her and took her to Silvermoon Hall. Paimon still feels tricked though, so names her Eggy for being a bad egg. Just as we've decided to enjoy our trip to the moon, the ship starts falling apart and we all have to eject in escape pods. So our fantasy adventure has now taken us on a spaceship and landed us on the moon. The first thing I noticed is that the teleport waypoints are different. We've seen normal teleport waypoints in some crazy locations, like underneath a celestial nail inside a whirlwind, inside the sacred volcano, on a floating dragon city, on a random floating rock. Is this the Night Kingdom? Enkanomiya, the Temple of Space, and even bubble worlds like Simulanka. They also show up on man-made structures. It kinda seems like they just appear wherever the hell they want, but the moon has different ones. Interesting. Anyway, we eventually track down Eggy, who has been grabbed up by an Archaeolune device that mistook her for a moon pearl. There's a reason for that, and we rescue her again. We bring her back to the control panel at the entrance where she can extract information, and learn that her name is Ninin. This tower is an energy source for the Eye of Ibni Bellum, which is a monitoring station that scans the entire lunar surface. So, naturally, that's our next destination. Once there, we confirm that Columbina seems to be at a place called Ungien Circle, but Ninin also uncovers some records from the dragons who built this place. It started with Ibni Bellum, who built the spaceship to come here. He was known as the first moongazer. This obviously happened after Nibelung created the moons and left Tevat, but it was long before the Heavenly Principles arrived and took over. While Ibni Bellum was surveying the moon with his fellow researchers, he received a deep space transmission that he could not decipher. He assumed it was from Nibelung, because who else would be sending messages to Tevat? So they constructed the Eye of Ibni Bellum to scan for any subsequent transmissions, but they found nothing for a long time. Once Ibni Bellum died, the remaining researchers converted it into a station to monitor the lunar surface. If you read the info in the terminal, Ibni Bellum mentions a specific celestial body he was scanning, which sounds like a planet that has signs of construction but no signs of life, but then he also calls it a star, so who knows what it actually is. As a final note, Ibni Bellum says he kicked Ungien off the research team for being an oathbreaker, which we can remember for later when we try to put together a timeline of the history of the Frost Moon. Another achievement reference. When this popped up, I was a little confused because I was like, what? Is someone having a stroke? But FAST is also an acronym for a massive radio telescope in China. In fact, the largest of its kind in the world, which scans deep space for undiscovered pulsars and other interesting things, including potential alien radio signals. Moving along, we make our way to Ungien Circle. We see a so-called mega Kuhenki that will be important later, but the important thing to take note of now is that Ungien Circle appears to be a crater from the outside. However, when we approach, a veil opens and reveals a rich habitat inside. This cloaking technology will be very important for theories to come. Inside, there are tons more black Kuhenki like Ninin, and the habitat itself is very reminiscent of the inside of the sacred city of Tolan, which is another habitat created by dragons. We also learn about these knotted moonlit vines, which are plants transformed by high levels of archaeolune energy that are destructive to the environment. Unfortunately, even after clearing it, the terminal is missing the information that Ninin wants. So we go back to looking for Columbina, who was apparently hanging out with that mega Kuhenki, and we need to use this giant elevator to the Space Lifeform Capture Station. We find another terminal and learn about Ungien, the namesake of this area. He was another researcher who thought Ibni Bellum was wrong about the mysterious signal being from Nibelung, and instead thought it was from some other creature from outer space. So he built the Space Lifeform Capture Station to seek out such creatures. Regardless, we need to once again activate a power generator, which involves diving deep under the moon's surface. We pass by an upside-down forest, which is cool. The generator itself sits in a giant sea of archaeolune energy, which I guess makes up the core of the moon. Long story short, we activate this massive turbine, escape from the area, and ride the elevator up. Along the way, we learn Ungien had a lover named Magis Geti, and Paimon makes a remark about what if Traveler had been caught by this station. That's not what actually happened, but perhaps this is foreshadowing a future lore reveal. At the top, we enter zero gravity and fly our way over to Columbina, who's having a chat with the Mega Kuhenki, whose name is Maggie. She's understandably surprised to see us, and we exchange stories. Columbina apparently has no idea what the Black Kuhenki are. Ninin seems to have properties unrelated to the moon, and when Columbina found her, she didn't respond to Kuvaki. What she did respond to was other Black Kuhenki, which she consumed subconsciously, or more accurately, merged. Columbina brought her to Silvermoon Hall to stop that, and also gave her the ability to mimic her so that people wouldn't freak out if they saw the Black Kuhenki there. In any case, we learn Maggie had a companion named Ungi, both of whom grew to this size because of the high energy in the Lunar Sea where they normally live. They recently had a fight that disrupted the environment. Columbina intends to go there and get something called an Ancient Moon's Font to fix it. And before we can ask why Maggie and Ungi's names sound familiar, Ninin straight up confirms that they are Magis Geti and Ungien, the researchers we learned about earlier. Somehow, they turned into these Kuhenki. On the way down, we notice the station is half destroyed, and Columbina says the likely culprit is this spaceship floating out here, which must have crashed into it. We'll learn about that soon. When we finally get eyes on Ungi, he shoots Maggie. Headshot! She's mostly okay, but now we need to make it to Ungi on foot. Luckily, Columbina gets the Kuhenki here to help. When Ungien flees, we get the ancient moons fought, and Ninin gets more lore. Another dragon researcher named Lusalim, who was Ungien and Magisgetti's student, originally built the Lunar Veil Laboratory in this area. This was a project meant to cloak the entire moon. A smaller version was first tested in Ungien's Circle, which is why it wasn't visible from outside. Unfortunately, when the version to cloak the entire moon was being set up here, that's when the heavenly principles arrived and broke it, causing it to explode, which is what turned this whole area into what it is now. We can get even more lore on Project Lunar Veil from the point of interest in this area, but we'll save that for another time. We are interrupted by Ungien coming in for another attack. We do a Dvalin-style battle to subdue him and remove the knotted vines that are hurting him. Ninin says his behavior is likely because of the information he got from the terminal in Ungien's Circle, the one that was empty after we cleared the vines from it. Ninin also says that the two of them are the same kind, and that she can absorb the information from him. After some debate and effort, she successfully pulls it off. The lore we get is that the mysterious signal from space finally appeared again, long after Ibn Bellum died. The Eye of Ibn Bellum successfully captured the signal and determined its point of origin. It was too far away to make a round trip, but nonetheless, Ungien decided to make a one-way trip to the source in a spaceship called Moongazer. The other researchers assumed he was gone forever, but many years later, Moongazer somehow returned and crashed into the space lifeform capture station. It was also cloaked at the time, and teaser for some of that bonus Lunar Veil lore I mentioned, the ship's cloaking method is where they got the idea for the Lunar Veil. Magisgetti entered the ship to find her lover, but only found a round black spiky creature. But actually, this creature was Ungien, at least Ungien after fusing with a strange alien creature. Apparently, he did this on purpose so that he could allow the creature to communicate its message through him in a language the other dragons could understand. We don't yet learn what the message was. After conveying it, he started to die, but Magisgetti used an experimental technique on him to convert him into ancient moon energy, which is his current form as Ungien, the artificial Kuhenki. Unfortunately, his consciousness was lost, and despite Magisgetti dedicating her life to restoring him, she eventually reached the end of her life, and asked Lusalim to perform the same technique on her. He did, but the result was the same, so that's how they got like this. Ultimately, this means Lusalim is likely the final piece of the puzzle to determine what Project Moongazer and Ninin's mission are. As for Lunar Veil, Columbina says what I'm thinking, in that it sounds an awful lot like the False Sky, because as I talked about way back in my Luna 4 video, Teyvat is probably disguised from the outside in order to prevent evil forces from finding it. And we'll definitely get more into that later, but first, Columbina also suggests that Lusalim might have made a deal with the Heavenly Principles to preserve his research, which might be why the various facilities on this moon are still intact, and perhaps even why this moon is in one piece, while the other two were destroyed. Further, she mentions a place on the far side of the moon where he is likely to have gone after this laboratory was destroyed, so that's our next destination. And now we get our first look at what Nicole meant when she said Nibelung turned the moons into weapons. Only if you did the Colors Out of Space quest, then it's actually your second look. The ethereal visions during that quest are identical to various structures on the moon, including the Eye of Ibn Bellum, Neurstone Circle, and this base. So unless the Moongazers built an Eye of Ibn Bellum on all three moons, that vision was of the Frost Moon and this very base. Inside, Ninin accesses another terminal which points us toward Lusalim's new lab. The rest of this dialogue just reiterates what we already know, because Nicole already told us all of this, so I don't know why Paimon and Traveler are acting like this is the first they've heard of it. I doubt you can even do this quest if you haven't done that other one first. But wasting time with this allows Columbina to mysteriously disappear, so there's that. We infiltrate the base and eventually make it to Lusalim's lab, and this is where the real lore starts. We find a translation that Lusalim made of the message delivered by the Ungien black-body creature that was found inside the Moongazer. Basically, it just says, "We were here. It came from a civilization that tried to fight off the star-devouring darkness of the universe, but they don't think they'll survive. So they sent the message out to let any other civilization that finds it know that they are not alone in the universe in the fight against the darkness." There's also a footnote that Ninin is Lusalim's daughter, and that the final piece of the puzzle comes directly from the Moon Sisters and waits at the moon's core. There is a part 2 of this message, as well as a second log that confirms Columbina's theory that Lusalim made a deal with the Heavenly Principles. It also clarifies that Ninin is not literally Lusalim's daughter, instead some kind of child of the stars. Lastly, it implies that the last step of Project Moongazer is to allow life, information, and memory to be inherited and circulated so that it can last forever, a power made possible by the moon goddesses. But we'll learn even more about that shortly. As far as part 2 of the message, well, we'll have to get into that later because it's a whole story of its own. It is the original message in the signal that Ibni Bellum received generations prior, translated by Nenkigia. Spoiler, that's Ninin. Oh, and the description of these entries is interesting in itself. Anyone who reads it can understand its meaning. That reminds me of when Kukul Khan told Little One, "If you willed it, you could have any intelligent being understand your words." It seems to just be an ability dragons have, to communicate pure information that anyone can understand regardless of language. Let's proceed to the moon's core. There we face some gravity anomalies, but Columbina comes back to fix it. Apparently she didn't mean to leave us, she just wanted to quickly explore something and got dragged off to the moon's core. She apparently went there and already learned everything we want to know. But we go back with her because there's still a data key that Ninin needs there. Unfortunately, Ninin can't come because I guess it's fatal to her. But her actual next objective is back at the Eye of Ibni Bellum, so no big deal. Traveler and Columbina proceed into the launch tube of the moon weapon, where we have this cool gravity effect. We have to defeat the core's defenses, including the cannon itself. This achievement name is a little alarming. It's a reference to a weapon in the Ender's Game series that obliterates matter at an atomic level through chain reaction energy fields. I doubt the moon cannon is anything like that weapon, because otherwise a single shot would have disintegrated all matter in and around the entire planet. So interesting that they chose that reference. Anyway, we finally pass it and get to the core of the moon, where we get the answers we want. This is a recording left behind by one of the researchers.
I'm Nenkigia. You could call me Ninin. That's what people usually call me.
The purpose of Project Moongazer is to retransmit the message brought to them by the Ungien black-body creature back out into the universe, so hopefully more civilizations can hear it. That creature was also apparently a data-based life form, also known as a sapient AI. The Black Kuhenki were created from the data of all the researchers who passed away, given life using the power of creation from the moon. That would be the Moon Sisters' contribution to the project. These Black Kuhenki are born in an indefinite cycle, gathering knowledge when they merge together until one of them remembers enough to continue Project Moongazer, sacrifice itself to resend the transmission, and revert back into data to maybe be reborn someday and do it again. That is our Ninin's mission. We all meet back at the Eye of Ibni Bellum and explain the situation. After some discussion, we agree to let Ninin complete her life's purpose, despite the risk of attracting the Abyss's attention. Interestingly, Columbina mentions that the Frost Moon has no traces of abyssal corruption, despite being outside the firmament for millennia, and Project Moongazer being activated who knows how many times in the past already. In fact, it kinda seems like 100% of the abyss that exists on Tevat is just what was brought here by Nibelung. Columbina also suggests that the Heavenly Principles might have taken measures to ensure that that is the case, even beyond the things we know about. Plus, Columbina says she can monitor and shield the message, making sure that no bad actors intercept it before it is far enough away from Tevat that it can't easily be traced back here. So that solves it. Ninin completes her mission. And with another achievement reference to an unexplained radio signal from outer space that we received on Earth in 1977, we complete the bittersweet ending to the moon-gazing world quest. Almost. We get one last major lore drop. After we all walk away, Ninin's activation of Project Moongazer unlocks a response that was received after one of the previous times that Project Moongazer was activated. The response is from the Travelers, before they ever came to Teyvat. Things to note about this message. Both Lumine and Aether are still together at this time. They are also both awake and not in their hibernation pods. They shout out one of my previous theory videos. The twins appear to be facing some trouble and sound like they are preparing to do something about it. And most importantly, this had to have been sent after the War of Funerary Flame, because the Death Star moonbase Nibelung built for the war contained the laboratory where Lusalim and Ninkigia finished the research necessary to enact Project Moongazer. And that is the end of the theory that Phanes is the Traveler's spaceship AI. Or is it? Let's get to the theory part of the video. Remember that the twins were awake when they received the Project Moongazer transmission, when their outfit lore clarified that an AI was flying their ship, and the twins were in hibernation. So it's possible the trouble they were facing stemmed from their AI abandoning them a long time ago, like on a potential flyby of Teyvat before any of this happened. Also, if you read this entry, it implies the Moongazers actually sent out their first transmission before Project Moonveil was ready, so that timing matches up. There's a fair chance that that transmission is what brought Phanes here, and it could also have been the one the Travelers were responding to. We have no way of knowing one way or the other yet. I'm just offering up some copium for those who need it. There was also the part where Lusalim mentioned siding with the Heavenly Principles and turning over all of his research. That includes the Lunar Veil project, and he hints that the reason he did it was to ensure his own mission was complete. That mission was likely to see Lunar Veil grow to the point of being able to hide not just the moon, but the entirety of Teyvat. So perhaps that is where Phanes got the idea to create the Firmament to conceal Teyvat from the outside, thus completing Lusalim's mission. That said, Traveler's outfit lore talked about a planet that appeared to be a dead rock, and there's an interactable elsewhere on the moon that specifically mentions making Teyvat appear as a dead rock, and it has nothing to do with the Firmament, but I'll dive more into that in the next video. We also get a full view of the entire planet of Teyvat. It even rotates over time, so we can see just about everything. It seems there are no landmasses on the planet outside of what we can already see. Specifically, the Dark Sea is just empty ocean. However, we can't see Snezhnaya, nor any of the other islands that we can see on the horizon but are outside the map boundary, because they're covered by clouds. Even the south part of Liyue, where we assume Black Cliff Forge is, has a cloud over it. That said, we can also see a silhouette of every landmass on Teyvat on this hologram inside the space station, and it does not have Snezhnaya on it at all. We can see the island we launched from, and the landmass near it is just Fontaine. There's nothing here that could be Snezhnaya. Same goes for all those other islands. Maybe Snezhnaya didn't exist at the time this space station was built, nor those other islands, since the presence of the two destroyed moons on this hologram indicates that it has not been updated for thousands of years. Then again, if that's the case, we should be able to see Mare Javari on it, but this just looks like the normal easy breeze summer resort island that we have now. This could just be an oversight by the devs, but I don't think that's a mistake they would make. Maybe they decided they're just not gonna put them on here because they're not on the world map, with no lore explanation as to why not, but that's also not their usual MO. No matter the case, I think this is worth mentioning. Alright, that's actually all the theorizing I can do with the world quest. So I'm gonna get back to exploring every inch of the moon so I can start working on the next video where I fully break down the timeline of the Frost Moon and the Moon Gazers, talk about the Moon Sisters and the Dragon Sovereigns, and get into some big theories. Like how there's an interactable that reveals that the dragons had mind manipulation technology that not only confirms my original theory about how the dead planet in the Traveler's outfit description is Tevat, but also potentially explains exactly how Irminsul was able to mass manipulate the minds of everyone on the planet. But like I said, if you want to know more, make sure to subscribe so you can catch my next video when it comes out. Until then, thanks for watching.